approval of the June 10th. In your wisdom, you create all people in your image, without exception. Through your goodness, open our eyes to see the dignity, the beauty, and the worth of every human being. Open our minds to understand that all your children are brothers and sisters in the same human family. Open our hearts to repent of racist attitudes, behaviors, and speech which demean others. Open our ears to hear the cries of those wounded by racial discrimination and their passionate appeals for change. Strengthen our resolve to make amends for past injustices and to right the wrongs of history. And fill us with courage that we may seek to heal wounds, build bridges, forgive and be forgiven, and establish peace and equality for all in our community, our city, and our country. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
For all. Thank you.
Amen.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Ettinger? Mr. Ettinger?
Here.
Mr. Milan?
Here.
Mr. O'Connell?
Here.
Dr. Ruggles?
Here.
Ms. Volcano? Here. Mayor Panto?
Here. Do you have approval of the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Additions or deletions? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano? Aye. Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
At this time, we're going to, according to our solicitor, we're going to reaffirm the approval of the June 10th meeting minutes that were approved last Wednesday and approve the minutes of the June 24th meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Volcano? Aye. Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye. At this time, we're going to go into our presentation by Mr. Narowski, followed by public comment on agenda items, which includes the zoning ordinance, and then we'll finish up the meeting. So at this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Stephen. Mr. Narowski, you're on.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council. During the many public meetings regarding these proposed changes, I've gone over the numerous conflicts present in our current code and how the amendments resolve those challenges. 3 weeks ago, I went through the proposal, identifying each section that provides usable and appropriate context-sensitive design standards for each neighborhood. Last week, I went over numerous objectives within the City of Easton Comprehensive Plan 2035 with which the proposed amendments advance those objectives. Throughout this process, I hope to keep things from becoming contentious by not calling out individuals or by making personal attacks on anyone's intelligence or ability, although the same was not afforded to the city staff. In an effort to communicate and engage the citizens, we had 3 public meetings prior to the December, January, February, March, and June Planning Commission meetings where these proposals were discussed. Of those 3 public meetings, no objectors appeared to have an open discussion, but some did write about it and share their musings with others outside of the city staff. There was no secrecy on behalf of the city. We publicly announced this project in January 2019 and were dismayed that very few individuals wanted to engage the city staff on this effort. I certainly respect and appreciate the concerns raised by those in the public, which is why there have been modifications to the original and subsequent proposals. The changes brought on by communication is a sign of strength in the process and responsiveness to the citizens, not a weakness that the objectors claim. For example, there was a proposal to increase housing density in the College Hill neighborhood. with the goal of increasing housing, reducing the cost per square foot, allowing for adaptive reuse of structures, and thereby providing attainable housing options. But as you recall, this was vehemently opposed and removed in response to the public. As much as the proposal evolved through discussion with the public, we have stayed true to the foundation of this work. Each of the projects require variances that should be or should have been denied based on the letter of the law and the volition of the residents objecting to these amendments. These projects are not alone. Since 2011, just a few years after this zoning code has been adopted, there have been 314 zoning appeals. More than 77% have been approved. That means, on average, there are more than 27 appeals and more than 21 granted each year under the current code. It is clear that the existing zoning code is not done well as a planning document or as a code for the city. The sheer number of variances required and subsequently approvals shows that the existing code was never appropriate for our city. Ignoring the obvious problems with the code for a misplaced pride that does not serve our community would be a mistake that will stifle the objectives set forth in our comprehensive plan. When evaluating the needs for amendments that are responsive to the existing conditions and needs of our residents, one need not go further than looking to the West Ward. Unfortunately, the West Ward is home to many small residential lots and principal structures covering a large portion of each lot. These smaller lots are limited to 40% lot coverage by the existing context-sensitive design standards. Oppressive regulations like this would not permit many residents of this neighborhood to add a small shed to their property, to store a lawnmower or other tools needed for good maintenance of their property, or even other small improvements for reasonable enjoyment of their property. To help you visualize this impact, I have a PowerPoint that will help you see the impacts of a 40% impervious coverage limit in the South Side and West Ward neighborhood. Note that some corrections were made to the information shown versus what was emailed last week. For example, the original document I had shared with you had shown the areas of the lots based on a conversion of acres to square feet, but now it shows the square footage as listed through Northampton County's ncpub.org service. 5 blocks in the West Ward and 6 blocks in the South Side were evaluated. When viewing the following slides, the color coding is as follows. Red indicates greater than 50% lot coverage. 50% is the standard identified in the existing dimensional criteria tables, which was brought over to the proposal before you. Yellow is for properties with lot coverage between 40% and 50%. 40% is the conflicting limit specified in the existing context-sensitive design standards that some are advocating to remain in the code. Green is used to indicate lot coverage between 30% and 40%, which identifies a situation where a little bit more impervious would create a violation of the existing context-sensitive design standards. This is a representation, a slideshow of the document sent to City Council last week. And this is the first block evaluated in the West Ward. It is bounded by Ferry, South 7th, Spruce, and South 8th Streets. As we go through this, you'll see lots such as this one, Lot 3 on this block, which are not included as an anomaly. As you can see, it's much larger than all of the other blocks, or lots in the block. And here it is identified. As you can see, in this block, and these lots, 79% of all these lots is over 40%. But only 9, or 38%, are greater than 50%. Block 2, bounded by Pine, South Cherry, Ferry, and South 13th Streets, also has a lot that is not included as an anomaly. This lot here is 100% covered impervious, but it is a very large parking lot. And here it's identified. In this neighborhood, every lot is greater than 40%. 2 lots be between 40 and 50%. Block 3, Washington, bounded by Washington, South 11th, Butler, and South Elder. Again, almost all, actually all but one, exceed 40%. And unfortunately, this neighborhood is so dense and covered that all of the lots except one exceed 50%. Block 4, bounded by Lehigh, South 13th, Washington, and Peachtree, also has an anomaly. Lot 7A is just grass with a small parking area up front, and identified here. This block is 94% greater than 40%. 71% of the lots are greater than 50%. The fifth block evaluated is bounded by Juniper Street, North 10th, Jackson, and North 11th Streets. This, and as you can see, there's a lot of green area on this satellite image. 82% of these lots exceed 40%. 4 of them, or 24%, are greater than 50%. In the West Ward, the summary of the evaluation is 90% of the lots evaluated are greater than 40%. 26 of those, or 26%, are between that 40 and 50% area. On the south side, the first block evaluated is Reynolds Street, bounded by Reynolds Street, West Berwick, Cole, and Wirebox Street. As you can see, 93% of the lots exceed 40%. Only 50% of the lots exceed 50% lot coverage. The second block, bounded by West Cooper, Valley, West Wilkes-Barre, and Iron Street, has 70% of the lots over 50%. 30% of them are between 40 and 50%, whereas 4 or 40% are greater than 50% lot coverage. Block 3, bounded by Rock, Reynolds, Williams, and Center Streets, has 7% of the lots greater than 40%. Only 36% are greater than 50% lot coverage. Block 4, bounded by Hoyt Street, McKean Street, West Berwick Street, and Packer Street, 71% of the lots are greater than 40%. Only 39% of the lots, only 39% of the lots exceed 50%. Block 5, bounded by West Bird, Sampson, West Milton, and Site Street, has 80% of the lots greater than 40%. Now this is a small block identifying 5 lots, but 3 of those 5, or 60%, are greater than 50%. But under context-sensitive design, only one of these lots would have a little bit of wiggle room before it hits the 40% threshold. Block 6, bounded by West Bird, Sites, West Milton, and Storm Street. Also, only 6 lots. It's a small block. 83% of those lots exceed 40%. Half of them exceed 50%. 2 of the 3 that do not exceed 50% are very close to exceeding 50%. But this one lot, which is between 30 and 40%, is very close to tripping the context-sensitive design standard threshold. The summary of the south side is that 74% of the lots are greater than 40%. 31% of them are between 40 and 50% and would have some room for additional development. The conclusion of this analysis is that 90% of the westward properties and 74% of the southside properties have lot coverage exceeding 40%. As you can see in the satellite images, these are typical blocks in what the U.S. Census determines to be low to moderate income neighborhoods. In other areas of the city where lots exceed 10,000, 13,000, or 16,000 square feet, it is easy to comply with lot coverage and have enjoyable use of your property at 40% limit. Heck, you could have a building footprint from 4,000 to 6,400 square feet or more, but as you could see from the analysis provided, there are neighborhoods where 3 properties combined do not have 5,000 square feet of land. These lower income neighborhoods are deprived through the restrictive, non-context sensitive design standards in our current code. While the impervious standard specified in these context sensitive design standards is not de facto exclusionary of revised code does a better job of protecting the city's historic character by supporting its revitalization and rationalizing development standards. Allowing some large footprint, single-use buildings contributes to preserving historic character. Large, single-use buildings provide space for theaters, hotels, museums, churches, civic buildings, and some retail uses. Historically, these structures contribute to the character and vitality of the downtown. They provide parking, lodging, entertainment, and cultural facilities. They also attract the visitors and provide the economic activity that sustains the historic core of the city. The revised code also supports the historic character of Easton by eliminating regulations that trigger random variances and compromise the legality of projects supported by the comprehensive plan. The objectors argue that the context-sensitive design standards are an award-winning tool and an example of sound planning. In reality, the standards have been applied on a citywide basis. This is a practice that violates providing unique standards for individual zoning districts that respond to the zoning code statement of community objectives and the legislative intent for each zoning district. Citywide standards for streets or landscaping in a residential area will not be appropriate for an industrial, commercial, or institutional zone. The revised code eliminates conflicting standards that create ambiguity and uncertainty for applicants and city agencies. For example, the old context-sensitive design have a provision that calls for uniform lot width, then is immediately followed by one calling for diversity in lot width. The ambiguity is obvious. The objectors have called for impervious surface standards that do not reflect existing conditions in the West Ward or the South Side neighborhoods. In reality, as just shown, these standards render a large percentage of existing homes and businesses non-conforming. The objectors' comments do not recognize engineering criteria or the role of current engineering practices in managing drainage and flood controls. The revised standards do. The standards supported by the objectors would mean that homeowners seeking to make routine additions or improvements would be unable to do so without the expense and uncertainty of seeking a variance. A variance that those same objectors say should not be granted because they are not in compliance with this zoning code. The residents most impacted by these restrictions are low and moderate income families. The The objectors argue that they are on the side of good planning. In reality, an analysis shows that the revised code advances the objectives and recommendations of the city's comprehensive plan. The objectors' arguments do not. While the LVPC has criticized some provisions of the revised code, their analysis did not come to terms with the city's established land use patterns, the findings of its comprehensive plan, the need to provide for a viable development review process, and the need to support the continued revitalization of the city through realistic controls that support needed projects and facilities. A letter from the Delaware Riverkeeper Network has been distributed. I had asked a stormwater expert, who is a professional engineer and a LEED accredited professional with an impressive history in developing stormwater standards, to review the letter. Laura Everly's letter was shared with the council, and I hope you had an opportunity to read it. I'm going to read some passages from that letter. The impervious percentages suggested by the Riverkeeper letter are not appropriate for an urban environment or a suburban environment. They are referencing a rural development standard. The proposed changes to the ordinance are also consistent with the county comprehensive plan. Goal 1 in future LV, Regional Comprehensive Plan Update, is an efficient and coordinated development pattern. The plan seeks to preserve natural areas and farmland by managing growth and development to enhance and strengthen cities, boroughs, suburbs, and rural communities. Part of this management is to encourage reuse and redevelopment within urban areas. Many areas of the city have existing impervious cover of 50% and even 100%. Limiting the impervious cover in these areas to 10 or 15% would not only be out of character with the existing development, but would severely limit the redevelopment opportunities in the city and would push this development to greener areas such as farmland, suburban, and rural areas. While working at the LVPC, Laura managed the initial creation of most of the Act 167 watershed plans in the Lehigh Valley. And she had said, we never used impervious percentages close to the one suggested in the Riverkeeper letter. When performing the hydrology model, in a city setting, they are inappropriate and impractical. The existing impervious in the city is likely well over 50%. In conclusion, she wrote, in my professional opinion, the ordinance as proposed provides for development, redevelopment, and reuse opportunities in the city that are in keeping with the existing development of the city. Runoff rate, volume, and water quality to streams like the Bushkill Creek will be maintained by the current city MPDES in Act 167.
Louis, can you get rid of Gloria Smith, please? Drop her, whoever GS is. You see her chats? And Sailor Moon, make sure GS and SM are taken off. Hold on a second, people. We have some nasty people online. So, Louis, if you could get rid of them, I'd appreciate it. EA, Barry A, also. And Patty Bruno is telling me that the Tom Bruno that's online is not Tom Bruno. He's been making a lot of comments about that he's getting kicked off. It may be a different Tom Bruno. I don't know. So don't get rid of him. He's not done anything vulgar yet.
Mayor, just for the panelists, and also any members of the public, we would like to, if you'd like to speak, we're going to request, in addition to giving us your full name and address, to call me directly, because I can receive phone calls. And we'll put this in the chat information as well. My phone number is 610-250-6620.